Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. We're happy to have with us Dr. Tom Riddle of Rood and Riddle. Doctor, we said at the start, we're going to try to make this show simple, peel back some layers of horse racing. Thank you for your time today.
Sounds good to me. Thank you very much for having me.
One thing to peel back early on here is a lot of people have asked over the years, and covering the sport as I have, why is January 1st the universal date for thoroughbreds? Everybody turns a year older on January 1st.
In the northern hemisphere, that's true for almost all breeds, including thoroughbreds, and they had to pick a day to keep everybody together, and they came up with January 1st. Back in the 60s, 1970-ish, they started putting mares under lights, and mares at that time, or any time, would cycle better if they were exposed to lights beginning about 60 days before you wanted them to cycle regularly. And so if they put the mares under lights December 1, they would start cycling in February usually, and then they would get the mares bred in February, so they would start to foal in January. And they said, well, let's choose January 1 as our universal date, and that's why they did it.
And you want those foals, and you want to get those mares in foal in February, if at all possible, don't you? February, March, not too much later, because you're going to have a very young horse that actually isn't, but technically is 1 year old.
Absolutely. It really helps to have that early birth date, although there have been a number of very good horses that have been born later in the year, April, May, but the majority do better if they're born early. They're more muscular, they mature faster, and they sell better usually. And so people like those early birth dates.
And the gestation period isn't 9 months as we would associate with humans.
No, it's on average about 11 months and 5 days, 11 months and a week. There's some variation in that, just like there is in people. Some mares go early, some mares go late, but on average about 11 months and a week.
Worst scenario, isn't it, for a breeder is to have a late foal? Well, not the worst always, but you get a late foal and they're maybe not as developed much and they're going to turn one.
You don't like to have late foals. A lot of people breed for the commercial market, so they're breeding to sell as yearlings. And the yearlings do better if they're bigger and more mature. That's been statistically proven. And so they like for them to be born early. Probably a bigger disaster is if they were born prior to January 1, because then, say they were born December 25th, Christmas Day, then January 1, they're going to be a year old, and so they're definitely going to be behind their age group.
And it's not like you can go back and say, can I get, you don't get a do-over on it, you don't get a mulligan on this, and I guess you can't go and say, well, listen, he's like a week old, technically. Do we have to give him a year? It's a year because that's the rule, that's the rule, that's the rule. Absolutely.
There has to be a rule. People have to have guidelines. And so it's a risk they take if they breed the mare early in February. They could, if she went very early, get a foal in December.
Now, as far as a veterinarian standpoint, when would you be out or someone from Rood and Riddle be called out to the farm and you check on the mares and because it is a very technical process and it is a very precise process, the whole breeding, contrary to what some people think where it's just two horses fall in love and have a baby. It's a very defined business. So
it is.
Yeah.
It's fortunately or unfortunately, depending on the way you look at it, it's a very mechanical process. We put mares under lights December 1 so that they will start cycling and be cycling regularly, we hope, by February. And then we are able to get the mare bred. And when we send the mare to the breeding shed, it's anything but, it's called natural cover, but it's anything but natural. There are usually about 6 or 7 people involved in the breeding. The mare ships to the farm. She's unloaded. She's cleaned up. The stallion is brought into the shed. He's cleaned up. He mounts the mare. And there are usually about 6 or 7 people involved in the whole process.
No Sinatra music, no flowers.
No. It's not anything romantic. But they are letting nature take its course. The stallion gets attracted to the mare, obviously.
Yeah.
And then the breeding takes place.
The lights, we talk about putting the mares under lights. So lights would be to make them think that it's a different time of year.
Right. They're trying to simulate the oncoming of spring.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put the mares under lights for 16 hours a day. Most people start lights, say at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then they're turned out later in the morning, and they usually are out all day, and then they come in at night, and they're under lights at night until 11 o'clock. So 8 hours of darkness, 16 hours of daylight. It works in the stall. It can also work if the mare is in a lighted paddock. As long as there's nothing she can hide behind, as long as she's exposed to the light for those 16 hours, she should be fine outside. Although the lights are the primary reason the mares cycle early, but if the temperature is too cold, the mare isn't going to cycle as well. So warmth helps. So ideally you would like for the mare to either be blanketed or in a stall so that she is kept a little bit warmer than she would if she were out fighting the elements.
I wonder always, we look at this each year on NBC when we're getting ready to do the show, how many actual 3-year-olds, or all 3-year-olds obviously because of the January 1st universal date, but how many actual 3-year-olds run? Several of them become 3-year-olds over the course of the Triple Crown.
Absolutely, absolutely. There certainly are a number that don't become 3 until May or even after the Derby. But on average, the majority of Kentucky Derby winners, say, are born earlier in the year, February or March, along with the majority of thoroughbred foals. So it's an odds game. Most foals are born early part of the year, so most Derby winners are born at the same time.
So it is the science of breeding. It is the science of getting them ready to get to the track someday, they hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely it is.
And obviously, like humans, you don't know exactly what time. I mean, I guess sometimes you induce labor, but you may be delivering in the middle of the night. You may be delivering early in the morning.
No, it could happen at any time. Most mares do foal in the evening in the dark hours, probably because of the evolutionary process. Mm-hmm. They're able to protect their foal better at night, they think, and so that's why they're foaling then.
My mom obviously thought the same thing. I was born at 11:45 at night. I was. My sister was like 11:30, I think. We were night babies.
I know. A lot of women foal in the evening hours too, but I think it's probably more evenly scattered throughout the day.
So people don't even know this, do they? A lot of people probably are hanging around the track today that said, I did not realize that about the lights and getting the mares ready. And I guess they don't have to. They just have to say, I noticed he had a big race at the fairgrounds and he's coming to Kentucky.
I think that you're exactly right. A lot of people that are very, very much in the horse business don't know about the breeding end. And a lot of people in the breeding end don't know about the horse training business. So it makes sense that you don't know everything. There are a few people that have had exposure to almost all elements of horse racing, but most people have one or the other, but not both.
In some ways, it's probably for the best.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think those people that know a little bit about everything are very valuable, but that doesn't mean that somebody doesn't have great success even if they're not aware of what goes on in all aspects of the business.
As far as like at Rood and Riddle, you do cover all aspects, don't you? I mean, there's probably from the surgeries to the foaling, everything in between, horses on the track, horses that are being retired, whatever the situation.
We do. We're very fortunate. We've got about 58 veterinarians in Lexington and about 10 or 12 in New York and about 10 in Florida. And so we're trying to cover all aspects of the breeding industry and the performance industry. We have veterinarians that take care of the mares. We have veterinarians that take care of the foals. We have veterinarians that take care of the yearlings that go to the sales. And we have veterinarians that take care of the horses that are running, that any kind of performance issue they have with their running. We have veterinarians that can address that.
Most people, well, I don't say most people, but a lot of people out there, a lot of people even follow horse racing, they probably don't realize that like the Kentucky Derby and the Triple Crown, which are obviously, the Derby especially, and then the rest of the Triple Crown races, are the focus of the year. And then later on, the Breeders' Cup. But at that stage, like a 3-year-old horse, has been likened mostly to, say, a teenage basketball player who suddenly comes into college. Their maturity is still probably a year or two away, even though they're running in the most famous race at 3.
Absolutely, absolutely. Most of the thoroughbreds are not fully mature when they're running at 3, and toward the end of their 3-year-old year, or maybe even into their 4-year-old year, they reach their full maturity, and they may even get better at that time.
Doctor, it's been a pleasure.
All right, thank you very much.
Will you come
for
back?
having me.
Come back anytime.
I appreciate it. Thank
Look,
you a lot.
we've got notes and everything. It's like,
Okay.
and we didn't even use them.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Dr. Tom Riddle.
Thank you.